The sun hung like a copper coin in the Arizona sky, its merciless heat bearing down on the small farmstead that sat stubbornly in the shadow of red rock formations. Mary Ellen Caldwell wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dust across her forehead. At 19, she had her mother's delicate features, but her father's stubborn jaw and steady gaze. The combination made her beautiful in a way that unsettled the young men in town, though she paid them no mind. The Caldwell farm wasn't much to look at. A modest wooden house with a sagging porch, a barn that leaned slightly to the east, and a vegetable garden that Mary Ellen coaxed to life despite the unforgiving soil. But it was theirs, carved out of the wilderness by her father's calloused hands and her late mother's determination. "Mary Ellen," her father's voice cracked like a whip across the dusty yard. Samuel Caldwell stood in the barn doorway, his broad shoulders blocking the light. Even at 52, he cut an imposing figure, tall and lean, with silver threading through his dark beard and eyes that could spot a rattlesnake at 50 paces. "Yes, Pa." She set down the water bucket she'd been carrying to the chickens. "Stay close to the house today." His voice carried an edge she'd been hearing more often lately. "And keep away from the canyon. Antelope Canyon, the forbidden place." For as long as Mary Ellen could remember, her father had warned her away from the slot canyon that twisted through the red rocks 2 miles north of their property. Other children from neighboring farms spoke of exploring its narrow passages, marveling at how the light danced on the sandstone walls. But not Mary Ellen. Her father's warnings had always been absolute. "Pa, I'm not a child anymore. You heard me." He turned away, dismissing her with the finality of a man who expected obedience without question. Mary Ellen watched him stride back into the barn, his movements tense and purposeful. Something had changed in him these past months. The easy smile that once graced his weathered face had become rare. He jumped at unexpected sounds and spent long hours staring toward the northern rocks, as if waiting for something to emerge from the shadows. She finished her chores in silence, but her mind churned with questions. What was it about Antelope Canyon that frightened her father so? He was not a man given to superstition or idle fears. Samuel Caldwell had faced down claim jumpers, survived Apache raids, and built a life from nothing in this harsh land. Yet mention of the canyon made his jaw clench and his eyes dart away. The afternoon wore on, the heat growing more oppressive. Mary Ellen was mending a tear in one of her father's shirts when she heard the horses. She looked up to see her father saddling his bay gelding, his rifle already secured in its scabbard. "Where are you going?" she asked from the porch. "Town. Won't be back until tomorrow afternoon." He swung into the saddle with the ease of a man who'd spent half his life on horseback. "Bar the door tonight. Don't open it for anyone." "Pa, what's wrong? You've been acting strange for weeks." "Do as I say, Mary Ellen." His voice softened slightly. "Please." She nodded, disturbed by the plea in his voice. Samuel Caldwell never said please. She watched him ride away until he was just a speck of dust on the horizon. The farm felt too quiet without him, the silence broken only by the distant cry of a hawk and the whisper of wind through the stunted cottonwoods by the well. Mary Ellen tried to focus on her sewing, but restlessness consumed her. She paced the small house, straightened things that didn't need straightening, and found herself repeatedly drawn to the north-facing window. The red rocks seemed to glow in the late afternoon light, and somewhere among them lay Antelope Canyon, keeping its secrets. It was nearly sunset when she saw them footprints in the dust near the well, fresh ones, made since her father had left. The boots that made them were large, with a distinctive worn spot on the left heel. Not her father's boots, not anyone's boots she recognized. Her heart quickened as she followed the trail. The prints led north, directly toward the forbidden canyon. Someone had been watching the house, waiting for her father to leave. The thought sent ice through her veins despite the lingering heat. Mary Ellen stood at the edge of the property, staring at the footprints that continued into the rocky terrain. Every warning her father had ever given her screamed to turn back, to bar the door as he'd instructed and wait for his return. But those warnings had never come with explanations, and she was tired of being kept in the dark like a child. She fetched her father's old Colt Navy revolver from the house checking that all 6 chambers were loaded. The weight of it felt foreign in her hand, though her father had taught her to shoot when she was 12. "A woman alone needs to be able to protect herself," he'd said then, and she'd never forgotten the lesson. The sun was sinking low, painting the rocks in shades of blood and gold. If she was going to follow those prints, it had to be now, while there was still light to see by. She knew these rocks well enough to find her way back in the dark, if needed. Mary Ellen tucked the revolver into her belt, pulled on her father's old duster to ward off the evening chill, and set out north. The footprints were easy to follow in the sandy soil between the rocks. Whoever had made them hadn't bothered to hide their trail, either confident they wouldn't be followed or wanting to be found. As she drew closer to Antelope Canyon, her pulse quickened. The entrance was a dark slash in the rock face, barely wide enough for a person to pass through sideways in some places. The last rays of sunlight couldn't penetrate its depths, and shadows pooled like dark water at its mouth. The footprints led directly inside. Mary Ellen hesitated at the threshold. Every instinct told her to turn back, but curiosity had always been her weakness. Her father knew it too. It's why his warnings had always been so stern. But he wasn't here now, and someone had been watching their home. Someone who had business in the Forbidden Canyon. She thought of her mother, dead these 5 years from fever. Elizabeth Caldwell had been a woman of remarkable courage, never backing down from a challenge. "Fear is just wisdom wearing a disguise," she used to say. "The trick is knowing when to heed it and when to push through." Mary Ellen touched the grip of the revolver for reassurance and stepped into the canyon. The temperature dropped immediately, the narrow walls blocking out the desert heat. She had to turn sideways to navigate the tightest spots, the sandstone rough against her palms. Above, the slot of sky was turning purple with dusk. The footprints continued, joined now by others. Multiple sets, some old, some fresh. This was no occasional hiding spot. People came here regularly. The revelation made her stomach tighten. What business could men have in this remote canyon that required such secrecy? She pressed on, the passage widening and narrowing like the throat of some ancient beast. The silence was complete, broken only by her own breathing and the whisper of her boots on sand. Then, carried on a trick of the wind, she heard it, the low murmur of voices somewhere ahead. Mary Ellen froze, pressing herself against the canyon wall. Her hand found the revolver, though she didn't draw it. Not yet. She needed to know what she was dealing with first. Inch by careful inch, she crept forward. The voices grew clearer, though she couldn't make out words. There was light ahead, too, the warm glow of a campfire painting the canyon walls in flickering shadows. A bend in the passage provided cover. Mary Ellen peered around it and had to stifle a gasp. The canyon opened into a wider chamber, and it was far from empty. A camp had been set up, bedrolls, supplies, and yes, a fire crackling in a ring of stones. But it was what she saw beyond the camp that made her blood run cold. Stacked crates marked with the stamp of Hendrickson's General Store, the same store where her father bought their supplies, the same store that had reported a robbery 2 months ago, claiming bandits had made off with half their inventory. But these weren't bandits lounging around the fire. She recognized them, even in the dim light. Tom Morrison, who owned the ranch adjacent to theirs. Jacob Fuller, the banker who held the mortgage on half the farms in the county. And others, respectable men, pillars of the community. What were they doing here? And why had someone been watching the Caldwell farm? A name caught her ear, drifting from the conversation around the fire. Her father's name. "Caldwell's getting suspicious," Morrison was saying. "Saw him poking around near the North Trail last week." "He's always been too clever for his own good," Fuller replied. "Should have brought him in from the start. Man's got more sand than sense, but he's no fool." "Too late for that now." This from a voice Mary Ellen didn't recognize. "He's made his position clear. Either he's with us or he's against us. And if he's against us..." The threat hung in the air like smoke from the fire. Mary Ellen's mind reeled. Her father knew about this place, these men. That's why he'd forbidden her from coming here. Not from superstition, but to protect her from knowledge that could get her killed. She needed to leave. Now. Before they discovered her presence. But as she began to ease back the way she'd come, her boots scraped against loose rock. The small sound seemed to echo like thunder in the confined space. The voices stopped. "What was that?" someone asked. "Probably nothing. A coyote, maybe." "Maybe. Morrison, go check." Mary Ellen's heart hammered against her ribs. She couldn't go back. Morrison would spot her in the narrow passage. Her only option was to go deeper into the canyon and hope to find another way out. She slipped further into the shadows, moving as quickly as she dared. Behind her, she could hear Morrison's boots on stone, the sound growing closer. The canyon twisted and turned, branching into side passages that could lead anywhere or nowhere. She chose one at random, praying it wouldn't dead end. The darkness was nearly complete now, forcing her to feel her way along the walls. Her father's duster caught on projections of rock, and she had to resist the urge to simply run blindly forward. Morrison's voice echoed behind her. "See anything?" "No, but someone's been here. Fresh scuff marks on the rock." More voices now, more footsteps. They were searching for her. Mary Ellen pressed on, terror lending speed to her movements. The passage she'd chosen began to climb, and she dared to hope it might lead to the surface. Her hands were scraped raw from the rough stone, and her breath came in short gasps she tried to muffle. Then, blessed relief starlight ahead. The passage opened onto a ledge halfway up the canyon wall. She could see the desert spreading out below, silver in the moonlight. But the ledge was narrow, with a drop of 30 feet or more to the canyon floor. Behind her, the voices grew louder. They'd found her trail. Mary Ellen looked at the ledge, at the treacherous path it offered along the canyon wall. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal in the dark, but staying meant certain discovery, and she'd heard the threat in their voices when they spoke of her father. She thought again of her mother, of the courage that had brought her to this wild land and kept her here despite all hardships. That same blood flowed in Mary Ellen's veins. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out onto the ledge and began to make her way along the canyon wall, one careful step at a time. Below, the darkness yawned like an open grave. Above, the stars watched with cold indifference. She had survived the first test, but Mary Ellen knew this was only the beginning. The secrets hidden in Antelope Canyon were darker than she'd imagined, and her father was somehow at the center of it all. Tomorrow, when he returned from town, she would have to decide, maintain the fiction of ignorance, or confront him with what she'd discovered. Either choice could shatter the life they'd built in this unforgiving land. But some truths, once glimpsed, couldn't be unseen. The desert wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of sage and secrets. Mary Ellen Caldwell pressed on through the darkness, knowing that by morning nothing would ever be the same. Mary Ellen barely slept that night. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind made her reach for the Colt she'd placed beneath her pillow. When dawn finally broke, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold, she was hollow-eyed but resolute. Her father returned as promised, just past noon. She watched from the kitchen window as he unsaddled his horse, noting the tense set of his shoulders, the way he kept glancing toward the northern rocks. When he entered the house, she had coffee waiting. "How was town?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. "Fine." He hung his hat on the peg by the door, avoiding her eyes. "Any trouble while I was gone?" The lie came easily. "No, Pa. Quiet as a grave." He nodded, seeming to relax slightly. They ate lunch in silence, the weight of unspoken secrets heavy between them. When he announced he was going to check the fence line on the south pasture, Mary Ellen knew her opportunity had come. She waited until he was well away from the house before setting out. This time, she was better prepared. Water, matches, a lantern, and the revolver fully loaded. The afternoon sun was brutal, but she welcomed its light. No more stumbling through darkness. The footprints from yesterday were still visible, joined now by others. The tracks of her pursuers from the night before. They'd given up the search eventually, but she had no doubt they'd be watchful now. Someone had been in their secret canyon who shouldn't have been. Mary Ellen approached more carefully this time, taking a circuitous route through the rocks. She found a vantage point above the canyon entrance where she could observe without being seen. For an hour, nothing moved. Then, satisfied the way was clear, She descended. The canyon was different in daylight. Shafts of sun penetrated the narrow opening, illuminating walls carved by ancient waters into flowing, organic shapes. The sandstone glowed with inner fire, oranges and reds and purples that seemed to pulse with life. Despite everything, Mary Ellen found herself momentarily transfixed by the beauty. She pressed deeper, retracing her path from the night before. The camp was still there, though the fire had been extinguished and covered with sand. Empty cans littered the ground. Beans, peaches, crackers, all bearing the stamp of Hendrickson's store. But it was what she found beyond the camp that made her stomach turn. The canyon widened into a series of connected chambers, and each one told a story of organized crime. Stacked goods pilfered from merchants across 3 counties, saddles and tack with brands filed off, cases of ammunition, and in one chamber, a makeshift stable with a dozen horses, fine animals that didn't belong in a hidden canyon. This wasn't mere thievery. This was an operation, systematic and far-reaching. Mary Ellen picked up a ledger from a crate, flipping through pages of meticulous records. Inventory lists, distribution plans, payments to various parties. The names were in code, but the locations were clear: Jerome, Prescott, even as far as Phoenix. How long had this been going on? How many supposedly upstanding citizens were involved? A page near the back made her blood freeze. It was a list of ranches and farms in the area, with notes beside each name. Cooperative, unaware, potential problem. The Caldwell farm was marked with a star and a single word: liability. Her hands shook as she set the ledger down. They saw her father as a threat, someone who might expose their operation. Is that why someone had been watching the house? Were they planning to? Voices echoed from the entrance. Mary Ellen's heart leapt into her throat. She grabbed the ledger and ducked behind a stack of crates, pressing herself into the shadows. 3 men entered the chamber. She recognized Tom Morrison's drawl immediately. "Telling you, someone was here last night. We need to post guards." "Guards would draw attention," another voice argued. She thought it might be Fuller, the banker. "The whole point is to keep this quiet. Won't stay quiet if Caldwell gets wind of it," Morrison countered. "Man's been sniffing around like a hound on a scent. Mark my words, he knows something." "Then we deal with him." The third voice was cold, matter of fact. "Make it look like an accident. Horses spook, wagon overturns. Happens all the time." Mary Ellen bit down on her knuckle to stifle a gasp. They were discussing her father's murder as casually as the weather. "And the girl?" Fuller asked. "What about her? Young woman alone can't run a farm. She'll sell and move to town, or marry that Hendricks boy who's been mooning after her. Either way, problem solved." They moved deeper into the canyon, their voices fading. Mary Ellen remained frozen in place, the full horror of the situation crashing over her. This wasn't just about stolen goods. They were willing to kill to protect their secret. She had to warn her father. But how? If she revealed what she knew, would he believe her? And even if he did, what could they do? The conspiracy included the banker, the neighboring rancher, probably the sheriff too. Who could they trust? The ledger in her hands felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Evidence, proof of the operation, but also a death warrant if they caught her with it. Mary Ellen made her decision. She tucked the ledger inside her duster and began to work her way out of the canyon. But as she reached the narrowest part of the passage, a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead. Well, well. What have we here? It was a man she didn't recognize. Young, maybe 25, with cold gray eyes and a predator's smile. His hand rested casually on the butt of his pistol. "Seems we've caught ourselves a little spy," he continued, moving closer. "Question is, are you lost, miss, or are you poking around where you shouldn't be?" Mary Ellen's mind raced. She couldn't run. He'd shoot her in the back. Fighting was equally futile. Her only chance was to play innocent. I was looking for my horse," she stammered, letting fear creep into her voice. It wasn't hard. She was terrified. "She broke loose this morning and I tracked her this far." "That's so?" His eyes narrowed. "And what's your name, miss?" She couldn't give her real name. If they didn't already know who'd been in the canyon, no sense telling them. "Sarah," she lied. "Sarah Mills. My PA has a claim about 5 miles south." "Mills." He seemed to consider this. "Don't know any mills in these parts." We're new, just arrived from Kansas last month. He stepped closer, and Mary Ellen could smell whiskey and tobacco on his breath. Funny thing is, I know every claim within 10 miles, and there ain't no Mills family south of here. Her hand inched toward the revolver, but he was faster. His pistol was out and aimed at her chest before she could blink. Hands where I can see them, miss. Now let's try this again. Who are you, and what are you doing here? Before Mary Ellen could answer, another voice rang out from behind the gunman. Let her go, Wade. Mary Ellen's heart sank. She knew that voice, though she'd never heard it carry such authority. The gunman, Wade, didn't lower his weapon, but he glanced over his shoulder. Why would I do that, Caldwell? Samuel Caldwell stepped into view, his own rifle held loosely but ready. Mary Ellen had never seen her father like this. Cold, dangerous, every inch the man who'd survived in this harsh land for 20 years. Because she's my daughter, he said quietly. And if you harm her, I'll kill you where you stand. Wade's smile widened. Your daughter? Well, that changes things, doesn't it? Question is, Caldwell, are you here as a father or as one of us? The silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Mary Ellen looked at her father, seeing him truly for the first time. The secret meetings, the mysterious absences, the fear in his eyes when he spoke of the canyon. He wasn't trying to protect her from them. He was one of them. Pa? The word came out as barely a whisper. Samuel Caldwell's face was carved from stone. Lower the gun, Wade. I'll handle this. Like hell you will. She's seen too much. You know the rules. The rules don't apply to family. They apply to everyone. Wade's voice hardened. You vouched for this operation, Caldwell. Said you could keep your farm quiet, keep people from snooping. Now your own daughter's here with her nose in our business. Makes a man wonder where your loyalties lie. Mary Ellen saw her father's finger move to the trigger of his rifle. My loyalties are where they've always been, to my family first. Now I won't ask again. Lower the gun. The tension was unbearable. 3 people, 2 guns, and secrets that could destroy them all. Mary Ellen felt the weight of the ledger against her ribs and prayed they wouldn't search her. Finally, Wade lowered his pistol, though he didn't holster it. This ain't over, Caldwell. The others will hear about this. I'm sure they will. Samuel Caldwell moved to Mary Ellen's side, his rifle never wavering. Come on, Mary Ellen, we're leaving. She followed him in stunned silence, acutely aware of Wade's eyes burning into their backs. They walked through the narrow passage, past the camp, and out into the blazing afternoon sun. Only when they were well clear of the canyon did her father lower his rifle. Get on your horse, he said, his voice rough. We need to talk. They rode in silence back to the farm. Mary Ellen's mind churned with questions, accusations, pleas for explanation. But the grim set of her father's jaw told her to wait. Once home, he led her to the kitchen table and poured 2 glasses of whiskey, something he'd never done before. He downed his in one swallow and poured another. How much did you see? He asked finally. Enough. She left the ledger hidden in her duster. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not even with her father. How long have you been part of this? He laughed bitterly. Part of it? Hell, Mary Ellen, I helped start it. The confession hit her like a physical blow. What? 2 years ago, after your mother died. The drought had ruined us. The bank was circling like vultures. Morrison came to me with a proposition. Help move some cattle, no questions asked, and earn enough to save the farm. He stared into his whiskey. It was supposed to be once. Just once. But it wasn't. No. Once you're in, and the money. He shook his head. I told myself I was doing it for you, to keep our home, give you a future. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. Mary Ellen felt tears stinging her eyes. So you're a thief, a criminal. Yes. The word fell between them like a stone. And now they want to kill you. I heard them talking. His head snapped up. What? Morrison, Fuller, and another man. They think you're a liability. They're planning to make it look like an accident. Samuel Caldwell aged 10 years in that moment. God almighty, how did it come to this? We have to leave, Mary Ellen said urgently. Tonight. Pack what we can and ride for California or Oregon. They'd find us. Men like Morrison have reach. And Wade, the one who held a gun on you, he's a killer. Tracked a man to Denver once just to settle a score. Her father rubbed his face with both hands. No, running's not an option. Then what do we do? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at something only he could see. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. We finish what I should have done months ago. We bring them down. Mary Ellen stared at him. How? I know where they keep the records. Real ones, not the coded nonsense. Names, dates, amounts, enough to hang half the territory. He met her eyes. But I can't do it alone. It would mean putting you in danger. She thought of the ledger hidden in her duster, of the cold discussion of her father's murder, of the life built on lies and blood. Then she thought of her mother, who'd faced every challenge with grace and steel. I'm already in danger, Mary Ellen said. At least this way. We're fighting back. Samuel Caldwell reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. His fingers were rough with calluses, but his grip was gentle. Your mother would be proud of you, he said softly. Braver than your old man, that's for certain. We're going to need help, Mary Ellen pointed out. Is there anyone we can trust? Maybe. There's a federal marshal in Prescott, John Carter. We served together in the war. If anyone would listen, it'd be him. Then we go to Prescott. It's not that simple. They're watching the roads, and after today, they'll be watching us especially close. He stood, pacing to the window. We need to be smart about this. Make them think everything's normal while we gather what we need. Mary Ellen fingered the hidden ledger. Should she tell him? Not yet, she decided. Trust would have to be earned back, drop by drop. Outside, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of blood and shadow. Somewhere in those red rocks, evil men plotted murder. But here in this simple kitchen, a father and daughter began to plot their salvation. The game had changed. The hunter had become the hunted, and Mary Ellen Caldwell was no longer the innocent farm girl who'd followed footprints into a forbidden canyon. She was a woman with secrets of her own, and she would use them to protect what she loved, even if it meant walking into the very heart of danger. 3 days passed in tense normalcy. Mary Ellen went about her chores, tended the garden, and smiled at neighbors who rode by. Her father worked the fields and mended fences, playing the part of a simple farmer. But at night, they planned. Morrison's called a meeting for tomorrow night, Samuel said over supper on the third evening. Full moon. Everyone will be there. Including you. Has to be. If I don't show, they'll know something's wrong. He pushed beans around his plate, appetite clearly gone. It might be our chance, though. While they're all gathered in the canyon, you could— No! Mary Ellen's voice was firm. We do this together or not at all. Before he could argue, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. They exchanged glances, hands moving instinctively toward weapons. Samuel peered through the window, then relaxed slightly. It's Fuller, the banker. His jaw tightened. Best see what he wants. Jacob Fuller dismounted with the careful movements of a man unaccustomed to the saddle. His city clothes looked out of place against the desert backdrop, though the pistol on his hip was all business. Evening, Caldwell, he said, not bothering to touch his hat. Miss Mary Ellen. Fuller. Samuel stepped onto the porch, rifle conspicuously absent but within reach. Bit late for a social call. This isn't social. The banker's thin face was grave. We need to talk. About your daughter's recent adventures. Mary Ellen's blood chilled, but she kept her expression neutral as she joined her father outside. Don't know what you mean, Samuel said evenly. Come now, let's not play games. Wade told us everything. Your daughter in the canyon, you threatening one of our men. Fuller adjusted his spectacles, a nervous gesture. The others are ready to take action. I convinced them to let me talk to you first. Generous of you. I'm trying to help, Caldwell. We've been partners for 2 years, profitable years, but trust is fragile and yours is wearing thin. Samuel crossed his arms. What do you want, Fuller? Reassurance, proof that you're still committed to our enterprise. The banker glanced at Mary Ellen. And that your daughter understands the importance of discretion. She understands. Does she? Fuller pulled a folded paper from his vest. Because I have here a rather interesting report. Seems someone matching Miss Caldwell's description was asking questions in town yesterday. Questions about shipment schedules and Missing inventory. Mary Ellen's heart sank. She had been careful during her trip to buy supplies, but apparently not careful enough. Girls gossip, Samuel said, though tension threaded his voice. Doesn't mean anything. Perhaps, or perhaps she's gathering information. Fuller unfolded the paper, revealing a detailed map. Do you recognize this, Caldwell? Even from a distance, Mary Ellen could see it was a drawing of their farm and the surrounding area. Red marks indicated watch points, routes, places of interest. Their home was at the center, circled in ink. We've been monitoring your property, Fuller continued. For your protection, of course, but some of the men have noticed unusual activity, rides at odd hours, visitors who don't stay long. It makes them nervous. Since when is a man's business anyone else's concern? Since that man joined our organization? Fuller's mild manner hardened. You knew the rules when you signed on. Complete loyalty, complete discretion. Your daughter's curiosity threatens both. Samuel stepped forward, and Fuller's hand drifted toward his pistol. Easy, Caldwell. I'm not here to threaten. I'm here to offer a solution. Which is? Fuller's eyes fixed on Mary Ellen. She joins us. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Mary Ellen felt both men watching her, waiting for her reaction. Absolutely not, Samuel growled. Think about it, Fuller pressed. She already knows our secret. This way, she's bound by the same oaths, the same consequences. It protects everyone. She's my daughter, not a criminal. Neither were you once. Fuller refolded the map with precise movements. The meeting tomorrow night. Bring her. Let her see what we're about. Make her choice with full knowledge. It's more than most get. And if she refuses, Fuller's smile was thin as paper, then we'll revisit the conversation about liabilities. He mounted his horse with obvious relief to be leaving. Tomorrow night, Caldwell. Midnight. Both of you, or neither of you. Your choice. They watched him ride away in silence. When the hoofbeats faded, Samuel slammed his fist against the porch post. Damn them. Damn them all to hell. Pa, I won't let you do this. He turned to her, eyes fierce. I won't let them pull you into their web. I'm already in it. Mary Ellen touched his arm. Fuller's right about one thing. I know too much to walk away, but maybe that's our advantage. What do you mean? She made a decision. Wait here. Mary Ellen went to her room and retrieved the ledger from its hiding place beneath a loose floorboard. When she returned, her father's eyes widened. Where did you get this? The canyon. That first night. She handed it to him. It's all there. Names, dates, shipments, evidence. Samuel flipped through the pages, his face growing paler with each entry. My God, this goes deeper than I thought. Some of these names, judges, territorial officials. Which is why we need to be at that meeting tomorrow. Mary Ellen sat beside him. If I'm there, inside, I can learn more. Find where they keep the complete records you mentioned. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than them deciding we're liabilities? She covered his weathered hand with hers. Pa, we're running out of time. This might be our only chance. He stared at the ledger, then at his daughter. In the lamplight, she could see him wrestling with the decision. Your mother would skin me alive for even considering this, he said finally. Ma would understand. She always said we do what we must to protect what we love. Samuel laughed, short and bitter, using my own words against me. You're definitely your mother's daughter. He sobered. If we do this, and I'm not saying yes yet, you follow my lead. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Agreed. And the moment things go bad, you run. Promise me. Mary Ellen nodded, though she had no intention of abandoning him. Some promises were made to be broken. They spent the rest of the evening studying the ledger, memorizing names and connections. Samuel added his own knowledge, painting a picture of an organization that had infected the territory like a disease. Morrison's the local leader, but he answers to someone higher, he explained. Never met him, but they call him Garrison. Supposed to be connected all the way to the governor's office. How do we fight something that big? Carefully, and with help. He rubbed his eyes. I'll send word to John Carter tomorrow, if we can get evidence to him. Will he come? John's a good man. If he gets my message, he'll come. Samuel stood, joints creaking. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. But sleep eluded Mary Ellen. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, mind racing through possibilities and dangers. Outside, coyotes howled at the moon, their cries echoing off the canyon walls. Morning came too soon. They went through the motions of a normal day, but tension thrummed beneath every action. Samuel rode out early, ostensibly to check the eastern boundary, but really to send a coded telegram to Marshal Carter. Mary Ellen busied herself with household tasks, all the while mentally preparing for the night ahead. As afternoon waned, Samuel returned with supplies from town and news. "Wade's been asking about you," he told Mary Ellen. "Seems you made an impression." "Wonderful. Also heard something else. 3 freight wagons went missing last week between here and Flagstaff. Drivers found dead, cargo vanished." Mary Ellen frowned. "Our group?" "Has to be. But killing drivers? That's new. They've always avoided bloodshed before." He unpacked coffee and flour with careful movements. "Something's changing, getting desperate maybe, or just greedier. All the more reason to stop them." As darkness fell, they prepared. Samuel cleaned and loaded his rifle and pistol. Mary Ellen did the same with the Colt, tucking a knife into her boot for good measure. She dressed in dark clothes, split skirt for riding. Her father's old shirt, hair bound tightly beneath a hat. "You look like a bandit yourself," Samuel said with a weak smile. "Good, maybe I'll fit in." They rode out as the moon rose, taking a circuitous route to avoid any watchers. The desert was silver and shadow, beautiful and treacherous in equal measure. Every rock could hide an enemy, every sound could signal danger. As they neared Antelope Canyon, other riders appeared, dark shapes converging on the forbidden place. Mary Ellen recognized some. Morrison's distinctive broad frame, Fuller's awkward seat in the saddle, others whose faces were familiar from town. "Stay close," Samuel murmured. "Don't speak unless spoken to." They entered the canyon in single file, horses picking their way carefully through the narrow passage. Lanterns had been lit in the main chamber, casting dancing shadows on the red walls. Perhaps 20 men were gathered, faces hard and watchful in the flickering light. Morrison stepped forward as they dismounted. "Caldwell, and daughter." His smile was cold. "Fuller said you'd come." "Said we didn't have much choice," Samuel replied. "There's always a choice, just some are smarter than others." Morrison's attention fixed on Mary Ellen. "Young lady, Wade tells me you're quite the explorer." Wade himself emerged from the shadows, gray eyes glittering. "That's right. Regular little scout, aren't you?" Mary Ellen met his gaze steadily. "I was looking for our horse." "Course you were." His smile promised trouble. "Well, you found something better. Question is, what do we do with you now?" Fuller explained. Samuel interjected. "She's here to join, to take the oath." Murmurs rippled through the gathered men. Some nodded approval, others looked skeptical. "Is that so?" Morrison stroked his beard. "And what makes you think we'd want her? No offense, Caldwell, but this ain't women's work." "You want guarantee of her silence," Samuel said. "This is it. Or we could guarantee it other ways," someone called out, earning dark chuckles. The threat hung heavy in the air. Mary Ellen felt the weight of eyes upon her, judging, calculating. She lifted her chin. "I can be useful," she said, breaking her silence. "People trust me, talk to me, especially the women in town, wives who know their husband's business." Morrison's eyes sharpened with interest. "Go on. You need information. Who's traveling when, what they're carrying, who might be suspicious of missing goods." She let a smile touch her lips. "A friendly girl asking innocent questions raises no alarms." "Smart," Wade admitted grudgingly. "Maybe too smart." "Smart is useful," Morrison countered. He studied Mary Ellen like a horse he was considering buying. "Tell me, girl, could you steal? Could you lie to good people's faces? Could you watch a man die and keep quiet about it?" The last question chilled her, but Mary Ellen kept her voice steady. "To protect my family. Yes." Morrison nodded slowly. "Blood tells. You're your father's daughter, sure enough." He raised his voice. "All in favor of admitting the girl?" Hands rose. Not all, but enough. Morrison smiled. "Then let's make it official." What followed was a perverse parody of ceremony. They made her swear oaths on a Bible that had no business in such a place. They showed her the brand they burned into stolen cattle, the marks that erased one owner's claim and established another's. They explained the signals, the codes, the drop points for stolen goods. And then Morrison led them deeper into the canyon, to chambers Mary Ellen hadn't discovered. Here was the heart of the operation maps, covering half the territory. Lists of targets, schedules of Army payroll shipments, and mining company transfers. "We're not just thieves," Morrison explained with pride. "We're businessmen. What the big companies do legal, we do better. They rob with papers and laws. We're just more honest about it." The twisted logic might have been amusing if Mary Ellen hadn't seen the arsenal stockpiled in the next chamber enough weapons to outfit a small army. "Planning a war?" Samuel asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Planning for opportunity." Morrison's eyes gleamed. "Government's got its hands full with Indian troubles. Mining companies are fighting each other. In chaos, smart men prosper. And dead freight drivers?" Mary Ellen couldn't help asking. "How do they fit your business plan?" Morrison's expression hardened. "That wasn't supposed to happen. Some of the newer boys got enthusiastic. It's been handled." She noticed several men shifting uncomfortably and wondered who exactly had been handled and how. The meeting continued past midnight. Plans were discussed, territories divided, profits distributed. Mary Ellen memorized everything, storing names and details like ammunition. Her father played his part perfectly, the reluctant but reliable partner. Finally, as dawn approached, Morrison called an end. "Next meeting's in 2 weeks," he announced. "Unless something urgent comes up. Caldwell, I want you and your daughter handling the Wickenburg run. Time she learned the practical side of our business." Samuel nodded, though Mary Ellen saw the muscle jump in his jaw. As the gathering dispersed, Wade cornered them near the entrance. "Touching scene in there," he said. "Father and daughter, partners in crime. Almost brings a tear to my eye." "You have something to say, Wade?" Samuel's hand rested on his pistol, just wondering if the apple fell far from the tree. His gaze traveled over Mary Ellen in a way that made her skin crawl. "Guess we'll find out on that Wickenburg run." He sauntered away, whistling tunelessly. "I don't trust him," Mary Ellen said quietly. "Neither do I. We need to move fast." Samuel glanced around, ensuring they were alone. "Did you see where Morrison went when he fetched those maps?" "The passage behind the weapons cache. There was a locked chest. That's where the real records are, names of everyone involved, including whoever's behind all this." He helped her mount her horse. "John Carter should get my message within days. We just need to survive until then." They rode home as the sun painted the desert in shades of rose and gold. Mary Ellen felt the weight of the night's revelations pressing down on her. The conspiracy was larger than they'd imagined, the danger greater, but they were inside now, with access to the very evidence that could bring it all crashing down. As their farm came into view, Samuel spoke again. "You did well tonight. Kept your head, said the right things." He paused. "Your mother would be proud. Despite everything, she'd be proud." Mary Ellen thought of the oaths she'd sworn to criminals, the lies she'd told, the deeper lies yet to come. Would she, Pa? Or would she wonder what kind of people we've become? Samuel had no answer for that. They rode the rest of the way in silence, each lost in thoughts of how far they'd fallen and how much further they might have to go before they found redemption. The Wickenburg run was set for 3 days hence. Mary Ellen spent the time learning everything she could about the operation, asking careful questions that seemed born of nervousness rather than investigation. Her father maintained his usual routine, though she noticed him checking his weapons more frequently and studying the horizon with worried eyes. On the second evening, visitors arrived at dusk. Not the suspicious riders they'd grown to fear, but familiar faces that made Mary Ellen's stomach drop. Sheriff William Trent, Judge Harrison Blackwood, and Mayor Eugene Carmichael, all pillars of the community, all men her family had trusted. "Evening, Samuel," the sheriff said, touching his hat. "Miss Mary Ellen. Mind if we come in?" "Course not." Samuel's voice was steady, but Mary Ellen saw his hand twitch toward his rifle before he caught himself. "Coffee's on." They gathered around the kitchen table, the same table where Mary Ellen had learned the truth about her father just days ago. Now she served coffee to men whose respectability masked corruption, keeping her expression pleasantly neutral. We'll get straight to it, Judge Blackwood said, his dignified face grave. There's concern about your commitment to our association. Oh, Samuel sipped his coffee calmly. Your daughter's sudden involvement, for one. Sheriff Trent leaned back, his star catching the lamplight. Some think it's genuine. Others wonder if you're planning something. Like what? Like talking to federal marshals, Mayor Carmichael said bluntly. He was a small, neat man who looked like he should be running a haberdashery, not a criminal enterprise. A telegram was sent from our town 2 days ago, coded but to Prescott. Care to explain? Mary Ellen's heart hammered, but she kept pouring coffee with steady hands. I sent word to my cousin, Samuel lied smoothly. He's been poorly. Family matter. Your cousin? The judge's tone was skeptical. And his name? Robert Caldwell. Runs a freight business out of Prescott. We'll check on that, the sheriff said. Meanwhile, Morrison wants assurances. Real ones. Such as? The three men exchanged glances. Mayor Carmichael pulled out a piece of paper. Sign this, he said. Samuel read it, his face hardening. A deed transfer. You want me to sign over half my land? Insurance, Judge Blackwood explained. If you betray us, you lose everything. If you stay loyal, the deed remains in our safe, unused. Simple. And if I refuse, Sheriff Trent's hand moved to his pistol. Then we have a problem. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the clock. Mary Ellen watched her father, seeing the war in his eyes. Sign away half their heritage, or reveal their true intentions through refusal. I'll need to read it proper, Samuel said finally. Make sure the boundaries are right. Take your time. The judge smiled thinly. We'll wait. As Samuel studied the document, Mary Ellen noticed movement through the window riders positioned around the house. Her mouth went dry. They weren't just here to talk. Seems accurate, Samuel said at last. He looked at Mary Ellen. Fetch my ink and pen from the desk, daughter. She moved to comply, mind racing. As she passed behind the sheriff, she saw more than just his service weapon. A second pistol, knife, and what looked like shackles. They'd come prepared for resistance. Returning with the writing materials, she caught her father's eye. The slight nod he gave told her he'd seen the riders too. Samuel signed with deliberate strokes. There, satisfied? Mayor Carmichael tucked the deed away. Getting there. Now, about the Wickenburg run. There's been a change. What kind of change? You'll have company. Wade and 2 others will accompany you. The sheriff's smile was cold. For protection, of course. Of course, Samuel echoed. And your daughter stays here, Judge Blackwood added. No offense, Miss Mary Ellen, but the first run's no place for a woman. But Morrison said, Morrison's not in charge. The judge cut her off, his grandfatherly mask slipping. Oh, he thinks he is, plays the big man. But this organization has layers, young lady. Wheels within wheels. Sheriff Trent stood abruptly. We've taken enough of your time. Samuel will be ready to ride at dawn, day after tomorrow. Come armed and provisioned for 3 days. The 3 men filed out, taking their false respectability with them. Mary Ellen and her father waited until the hoofbeats faded before speaking. They suspect, Samuel said quietly. More than suspect. Those riders outside, they're watching us. I know. He rubbed his face tiredly. The Wickenburg run is a test, or a trap. You can't go, not alone with Wade and his men. If I don't, we're finished. He stood, pacing to the window. But you're right, it's likely they plan to kill me out there, make it look like bandits or Indians. Then we leave tonight. Forget the evidence, forget bringing them down. Let's just survive. Samuel turned to her, and she saw something in his eyes that chilled her. Resignation mixed with determination. They'd hunt us down. You heard the judge. This goes higher than we imagined. We'd never stop running. He gripped her shoulders gently. But you could leave. Take the old trail through Devil's Canyon. Ride hard for California. I'll buy you time. No. Mary Ellen pulled away. We started this together. We finish it together. Mary Ellen, I have an idea. She moved to the stove, speaking low in case anyone was listening outside. What if Marshal Carter's already on his way? What if we could get word to him about the Wickenburg run? How? We're being watched. The Watson family. Their oldest girl, Clara. She's sweet on the telegram operator's son. If I could get a message to her, Samuel considered. It's risky. If they catch you, they won't. I'll say I'm trading preserves for eggs just like always. She gripped his hands. Pa, this might be our only chance. If Carter could intercept the Wickenburg run, catch them in the act. All right. He squeezed her hands back. But you go at first light before they expect movement. And if anything seems wrong, you turn back. They spent the rest of the night planning, speaking in whispers and farm talk that would mean nothing to outside listeners. When dawn broke, Mary Ellen hitched the small cart they used for town trips, loading it with jars of preserves and dried herbs, a normal sight for anyone watching. The ride to the Watson farm seemed endless. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every rider on the road could be one of them. But Mary Ellen kept her pace steady, humming tunelessly, as if she hadn't a care in the world. Clara Watson greeted her warmly, though her eyes showed concern. Mary Ellen, haven't seen you in weeks. Everything all right? Fine as summer rain. Mary Ellen unloaded her goods, chatting about inconsequential things. Only when they were alone in the kitchen did she risk the truth. Clara, I need your help. It's life or death. To her credit, Clara didn't hesitate. What do you need? Mary Ellen pressed a coded message into her hands. Get this to your beau. Have him send it to Marshal John Carter in Prescott. Urgent. Can you do that? Consider it done. Clara hid the paper in her apron. Mary Ellen, what's happening? People are talking, saying strange things about your father. I can't explain now. Just please, send that message. She left quickly, resisting the urge to race home. The return journey was torture, expecting at any moment to be stopped, questioned, discovered. But she reached the farm unmolested, finding her father in the barn, preparing gear. It's done, she told him. Good. Now we wait. The next day crawled by. Samuel cleaned weapons, checked supplies, wrote a letter he sealed and gave to Mary Ellen. Just in case, he said, though neither would acknowledge what that meant. She helped him prepare, all the while fighting the feeling that she was sending him to his death. That night, neither slept. They sat on the porch, watching the stars wheel overhead, sharing memories of better times. Her mother's laughter, the day they'd claimed this land, small victories against the desert's harsh embrace. Whatever happens, Samuel said as dawn approached, know that I'm proud of you. You've become the woman your mother always said you'd be. Strong, clever, brave. Brave? Mary Ellen laughed shakily. I'm terrified. So am I, but we do what's right anyway. That's what courage is. Wade arrived with 2 companions just as the sun cleared the horizon. Both were hard-faced men Mary Ellen didn't recognize, wearing their guns low and loose. Ready, Caldwell? Wade's smile was sharp as a blade. Ready. Samuel embraced Mary Ellen briefly, whispering, If I'm not back in 4 days, run. She watched them ride away, 4 men on a journey that should have been routine, but felt like a funeral procession. When they disappeared into the heat haze, she went inside and barred the door. The waiting was agony. Mary Ellen went through the motions of daily life, aware always of the watchers. Sheriff Trent rode by twice, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. Judge Blackwood's carriage passed once, slowing as it went. They were keeping tabs, making sure she stayed put. On the second night, she couldn't stand it anymore. Slipping out after dark, she saddled her horse and rode for the high ground overlooking the Wickenburg Trail. If Marshal Carter had received her message, if he was coming, she might spot his approach. The moon was bright, illuminating the desert in stark relief. She waited, scanning the horizon, hope dwindling with each passing hour. Then movement. Riders moving fast and purposeful. Her heart leaped, but as they drew closer, she realized with sinking dread that it wasn't the marshal. It was Morrison and a dozen men, riding hard toward Wickenburg. Riding to investigate why the run had gone wrong, or to finish what Wade had started. Mary Ellen raced back to the farm, mind spinning. Something had happened. The plan had failed or succeeded too well. Either way, her father was in danger, and she was alone. No, not alone. Somewhere out there, if God was merciful, Marshal Carter was coming. She just had to survive until he arrived. Reaching the farm, she found the front door ajar. Her blood turned to ice. Drawing the Colt, she entered carefully, every sense alert. The house had been searched, furniture overturned, papers scattered. In the kitchen, Sheriff Trent sat at the table, helping himself to her father's whiskey. "Evening, Miss Caldwell," he said pleasantly. "We need to talk about your recent activities. Specifically, a certain telegram sent to Prescott." Behind her, she heard the door close. Mayor Carmichael stood there, no longer the harmless-looking merchant, but something altogether more dangerous. "You've been a very busy young lady," he said. "Time to answer for it." Mary Ellen raised the Colt, but she knew it was useless. They had her cornered, trapped like the rabbit her father had taught her to snare all those years ago. But rabbits sometimes had sharp teeth, and desperation could make even prey dangerous. "My father," she began. "Is beyond your help," Trent said. "The only question now is whether you join him or prove yourself useful enough to spare." The lamp flickered, casting dancing shadows on the wall. Somewhere in the night, violence was unfolding, plans were unraveling, and the elaborate web of corruption was beginning to tear. Mary Ellen stood at the center of it all, a farmer's daughter who'd followed footprints into darkness and found herself holding secrets that men would kill to protect. The next move was hers, and it would determine not just her fate, but the fate of everyone caught in this deadly game. Mary Ellen kept the Colt steady, though she knew the odds. 2 men, both armed, and likely more outside. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. "Put the gun down, girl," Mayor Carmichael said, his voice paternal but eyes cold. "No need for anyone else to die tonight." "Anyone else?" The words came out strangled. "What did you do to my father?" Sheriff Trent poured another whiskey. "Wade's handling that situation, though from what we heard before Morrison rode out, there were complications." Complications. The word offered a thread of hope. If her father had fought back, if Marshal Carter had arrived, if anything had disrupted their plan. "You're thinking too hard," Trent observed. "I can see those wheels turning. Let me make it simple. Your father betrayed the organization. The penalty for that is death. But you're young, and you were led astray. There's still a chance for you." "What kind of chance?" Carmichael stepped closer, and Mary Ellen swung the gun toward him. He raised his hands peacefully. "Easy now. We're businessmen, Miss Caldwell. Your father had information we need, names of federal contacts, what he told them. Who else might know? Give us that, and you can walk away." "You'd let me go?" She couldn't hide her disbelief. "After some assurances." Trent's smile was reptilian. "Sign over the rest of the farm. Leave the territory. Never speak of what you've learned. Simple terms for keeping your life." Mary Ellen's mind churned. They were lying, of course. She knew too much to be allowed to live. But perhaps she could buy time, wait for an opportunity. "The information you want," she said slowly. "It's hidden. I'd have to show you." The 2 men exchanged glances. "Where?" Carmichael asked. "The old mine shaft, 1/4 mile north. Pa said if anything happened, I should retrieve it and run. It was a gamble. The abandoned mine was real. A death trap of rotting timbers and unstable ground. If she could lead them there, maybe? "Nice try," Trent said. "But we'll send men to check. You stay here with us." Her heart sank. So much for that plan. "Though I am curious," the sheriff continued, "about certain items missing from the canyon, a ledger specifically. Know anything about that?" Mary Ellen kept her face neutral. "No." "Funny thing. Wade swears someone was in the records chamber. Small hands rifled through the books, woman's hands, he reckoned." Trent stood, moving around the table toward her. "Turn out your pockets." "Stay back." "Or what? You'll shoot the sheriff?" He laughed. "Go ahead. My deputies are outside. You'd be dead before my body hit the floor." He was right. Mary Ellen slowly lowered the gun, placing it on the table. Carmichael quickly scooped it up while Trent searched her roughly, finding nothing. The ledger remained hidden beneath the loose floorboard in her room. But for how long? "Clean," Trent announced. "But that doesn't mean—" Hoofbeats thundered into the yard, many horses arriving fast. All 3 froze, listening. Shouts erupted outside, followed by the crack of gunfire. "What in hell?" Trent drew his weapon, moving to the window. The door burst open. Morrison stood there, blood on his shirt, face twisted with rage. Federal marshals, they hit us at Wickenburg. It's all coming apart. More gunfire outside. Through the window, Mary Ellen glimpsed uniformed men exchanging shots with Morrison's riders. Her message had gotten through. Carter had come. In the chaos, she moved. Grabbing the hot coffee pot from the stove, she flung it at Trent. He screamed, clutching his scalded face. She dove for her gun on the table, but Carmichael was faster, backhanding her across the face. She went down hard, stars exploding across her vision. "Forget her," Morrison shouted. "We need to get to the canyon, destroy the evidence." "What about Caldwell?" Carmichael demanded. "Dead. Wade shot him, but not before he killed Hayes and Jackson." Morrison spat blood. "Turns out the old man had more fight than we credited. Dead." The word hit Mary Ellen like a physical blow. Her father was dead. Everything they'd planned, everything they'd hoped. "Get up," Trent snarled, hauling her to her feet. Half his face was red and blistering. "She comes with us. Insurance." They dragged her outside into bedlam. Federal marshals had surrounded the farm, exchanging fire with the gang members. Bodies already littered the ground. In the midst of it all, a familiar figure caught her eye. Marshal John Carter, her father's old friend, directing his men with calm efficiency. "Carter!" she screamed. "John Carter!" A bullet whined past her ear. Morrison cursed and shoved her toward the horses. "Move!" They mounted in haste, Morrison throwing Mary Ellen across his saddle like a sack of grain. The group that had ridden so confidently into her yard was reduced to 6 men, fleeing desperately into the night. The ride was nightmare. Mary Ellen bounced painfully against the saddle, Morrison's arm iron across her back. Behind them, pursuit thundered. The marshals were coming, but the gang knew the terrain better. They reached Antelope Canyon as dawn touched the sky. Morrison hauled her off the horse, dragging her into the narrow entrance. The others followed, Trent still clutching his burned face, Carmichael wild-eyed with panic. "Bar the entrance," Morrison ordered. "Stack rocks, anything. Buy us time." "Time for what?" Carmichael demanded. "We're trapped. There's another way out. Through the back chambers leads to Devil's Ridge." Morrison shoved Mary Ellen ahead of him. "Move, girl. You're our ticket out of here." They plunged into the canyon's depths. Mary Ellen knew these passages now, had memorized them during her secret visits. She also knew Morrison was lying. The back chamber he spoke of was a dead end, solid rock. But she said nothing, mind racing. In the main chamber, Morrison went straight for the locked chest. "Help me with this," he barked at Trent. While they struggled with the heavy box, Mary Ellen edged toward a side passage. If she could slip away in the darkness. "Don't even think about it." Carmichael pressed a gun to her ribs. "You're staying right here." The chest broke open, revealing stacks of documents, money, and more ledgers. Morrison began stuffing papers into a satchel. "Forget that," Trent snarled. "The marshals will break through any minute." "These documents will hang us all," Morrison shot back. "We burn them or we're finished." Gunfire echoed from the entrance. The marshals had arrived. "Too late," Carmichael whispered. "God help us, it's too late." Morrison rounded on Mary Ellen, grabbing her throat. "You did this, you and your father. Well, he's paid for his betrayal, and now you will too." She clawed at his hands, vision darkening. This was how it would end, strangled in the dark, while evil men destroyed evidence of their crimes. Then Morrison jerked, his grip loosening. He looked down in surprise at the knife blade protruding from his side. Behind him, Wade stood with a strange smile. "Sorry, boss, but someone needs to take the fall for this mess, and it ain't gonna be me." Morrison collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. Wade turned the knife on Carmichael, who scrambled backward, firing wildly. The shot went wide, ricocheting off stone. Wade lunged, and the 2 men grappled in the dust. Trent, half blind from his burns, fired at shadows. "Where are you? Show yourself!" Mary Ellen crawled toward the scattered documents, grabbing handfuls and stuffing them inside her shirt. Evidence. Proof. Her father had died for this. "Nobody move!" Marshal Carter's voice rang with authority. He stood at the chamber entrance, rifle trained on the chaotic scene. Behind him, more marshals poured in. Wade released Carmichael's lifeless body, raising bloody hands. Marshall, thank God. I was trying to stop them. Save it, Wade. Carter's eyes were cold. Samuel Caldwell lived long enough to tell us everything, including your part. Wade's face contorted. He grabbed for his gun, but 3 rifles spoke as one. He crumpled beside his victims, the snake's smile finally gone. Trent threw down his weapon, falling to his knees. I surrender. I'll tell you everything, names, dates, all of it. Mary Ellen. Carter helped her stand, his weathered face kind. Your father, I'm sorry. He was a brave man. His sacrifice saved many lives today. She nodded, unable to speak past the grief choking her throat. Around them, marshals secured the chamber, gathering evidence, counting the cost of corruption. He told me you had more proof, Carter continued gently. Hidden at the farm? Yes, her voice came out raw. Under my bedroom floor. A ledger showing everything. We'll get it. With that and what we found here, we can clean out this whole nest of vipers. He squeezed her shoulder. Your father would be proud. You both showed incredible courage. Mary Ellen looked around the chamber that had hidden so many secrets. Bodies of men who'd seemed respectable. Documents that would expose a web of corruption reaching to the highest levels of territorial government. All brought down by a farmer who'd lost his way, then found it again in time to save his daughter. There are more, she said quietly. Judge Blackwood, others in town. The rot goes deep. Then we'll dig it all out, Carter promised. Every last one. As they emerged from the canyon, Mary Ellen saw the sun rising over the desert, painting the rocks in shades of hope. Her father was gone. The farm would likely be lost in the legal tangles to come. But she was alive, and the truth would finally be told. She thought of her mother's words. We do what we must to protect what we love. Both her parents had lived those words, and died by them. Now, it was her turn to carry on their legacy. The secrets of Antelope Canyon had been dragged into the light. The price had been terrible, but justice, long delayed, would finally be served. And somewhere in the vast Arizona sky, Mary Ellen hoped her father's spirit could see that his sacrifice had not been in vain. Marshal Carter led Mary Ellen back through the winding passages of the canyon. But instead of heading toward the entrance, he guided her deeper into the labyrinth. The other marshals were busy securing evidence and prisoners, leaving them to explore undisturbed. Your father mentioned something before he died, Carter said, his lantern casting dancing shadows on the red walls. Said there was more to find, a place Morrison never showed anyone, not even his inner circle. Mary Ellen remembered her father's words about the complete records, the real evidence that could expose everyone involved. The passage behind the weapons cache, she said, but we checked there, just supply crates and ammunition. Samuel said to look harder, said you'd understand. They reached the weapons chamber, now stripped of its deadly arsenal. Mary Ellen studied the back wall, running her hands along the sandstone. Her father had taught her tracking, reading signs others missed. There, a seam in the rock, too straight to be natural. Help me push, she said. Together they pressed against the wall. With a grinding sound, a section swung inward, revealing a hidden passage. Cool air flowed out, carrying the scent of must and secrets. The passage opened into a natural cavern, and Mary Ellen gasped. This wasn't just a records room. It was a trophy hall. Stolen artwork leaned against walls. Jewelry glittered in boxes. Cash was stacked like cordwood. And at the center, a massive desk covered in documents. Mother of God, Carter breathed. There must be a fortune here. But Mary Ellen's attention fixed on something else, a map spread across the entire back wall, marked with pins and colored strings. Each pin marked a business, a ranch, a government office. The strings showed connections, creating a web that covered half the territory. It's all here, she whispered. Everyone involved, everything they control. Carter began examining documents while Mary Ellen studied the map. Her own farm was marked, a red pin with a note. S. Caldwell turned. Eliminate. Other red pins marked other threats dealt with or to be dealt with. The cold efficiency of it chilled her. Mary Ellen, you need to see this. Carter's voice was grim. She joined him at the desk. He held a leather journal, its pages filled with careful script. It's Morrison's personal record, Carter explained. But look at this entry from 2 years ago, Mary Ellen read, her heart sinking. Caldwell recruited. Desperate after wife's death. Easy mark. If he becomes problem, daughter is leverage. They targeted him, she said numbly. Waited until he was vulnerable, then reeled him in. There's more. This name keeps appearing. Garrison. Seems he's the real power behind all this. Carter flipped pages. According to this, Garrison is actually Governor Garrison, Mary Ellen finished, seeing the truth laid out in Morrison's careful notes. The territorial governor is running the whole operation. The scope of it overwhelmed her. How did you fight corruption that reached so high? How did you get justice when the man sworn to uphold it was the very one destroying it? We have to get this out, Carter said urgently. All of it, before word reaches Phoenix and Garrison can react. They worked quickly, gathering the most damning evidence. Mary Ellen found a satchel and filled it with documents, including Morrison's journal. But as they prepared to leave, she noticed something else. A narrow opening in the cavern's far wall, partially hidden behind stacked crates. Wait, she said, approaching the gap. We don't have time. No, look. She squeezed through the opening, finding herself on a hidden ledge. The view took her breath away. Below stretched a box canyon she'd never seen before, completely enclosed by high walls. And filling it were hundreds of cattle, horses, even sheep, all bearing altered brands. Men moved among them, working with the efficiency of long practice. The real operation, she breathed. Carter squeezed beside her, whistling low. They're not just stealing, he said. They're ranching with stolen stock. This is bigger than anyone imagined. Among the workers below, Mary Ellen spotted familiar faces, cowboys from neighboring spreads, men who attended church with their families every Sunday. The infection had spread through the entire community. There. Carter pointed to a cluster of wooden markers in one corner of the canyon. Even from this distance, Mary Ellen could see what they were. Grave markers. Dozens of them. People who got in their way, she said, voice hollow. People like my father would have been. A shout echoed from behind them. The other marshals had discovered the hidden chamber. Time to go, Carter said. We've seen enough. They made their way back, but as they emerged into the weapons chamber, they found chaos. Sheriff Trent, who they'd thought secured, had somehow gotten free. He held a young marshal at gunpoint, the burned side of his face twisted in desperation. Nobody moves, Trent shouted. I'm walking out of here and taking the girl with me. She's my protection until I'm clear. Don't be a fool, Trent, Carter said calmly. It's over. We have everything. The records, the evidence. Adding kidnapping to your crimes won't help. You have nothing without witnesses, Trent snarled. And witnesses can disappear real easy in this desert. Mary Ellen felt the weight of the satchel on her shoulder, filled with proof of crimes. But Trent was right. Documents could be destroyed, testimony silenced. Unless... You're wrong, she said, stepping forward. There are witnesses you can't silence. Shut up, girl. The families of those men buried in the canyon. The ranchers who lost stock, the merchants forced to pay protection. She met his wild eyes steadily. You created hundreds of witnesses, Sheriff, and now they'll all come forward. I said shut up! He swung the gun toward her. The shot was impossibly loud in the confined space. Mary Ellen flinched, expecting pain, but felt nothing. Trent stood frozen, a look of surprise on his face. Then he toppled forward, revealing Marshal Carter behind him, smoking rifle in hand. Damn fool, Carter muttered. Never could tell when he was beat. The young marshal scrambled free, shaken but unharmed. Mary Ellen's legs suddenly felt weak, the accumulated terror and grief of recent days catching up. Carter steadied her. It's done, he said gently. It's all over. But she knew better. The arrests were just beginning. The trials would be long and bitter, tearing apart communities, exposing years of corruption, and she would be at the center of it all. The farmer's daughter who'd brought down an empire of crime. They emerged from Antelope Canyon to find the sun high overhead. More marshals had arrived, along with a judge from Tucson untainted by local corruption. Prisoners were being loaded into wagons, evidence carefully cataloged. Mary Ellen looked back at the canyon entrance, thinking of all the secrets it had held, all the evil it had concealed. Soon it would be just another geological wonder, its dark purpose erased. But she would never forget what she'd found there, or what it had cost. "Miss Caldwell?" A marshal approached. "We need to recover that ledger from your farm. Can you show us?" She nodded, though the thought of returning home, no longer truly home without her father, brought fresh pain. "Yes, and there's something else I need to retrieve." They rode to the Caldwell farm as part of a convoy, protection against any gang members still at large. The house stood empty, door still ajar from the night's violence. Mary Ellen went straight to her room, prying up the loose floorboard. The ledger was there, along with something else. The letter her father had written, sealed and addressed to her. She opened it with trembling hands. "My dearest Mary Ellen," it began. "If you're reading this, then I've paid the price for my sins. I pray you can forgive me for the shame I've brought on our family and for the danger I've put you in. Know that everything I did, wrong as it was, began with love for you and fear of losing what your mother and I built. I've left something for you, hidden where we used to watch the sunset when you were small. It's not much, but it's honest money, saved from before I lost my way. Use it to start fresh somewhere clean. Be brave, my daughter. Be the woman your mother knew you'd become. And remember, we are more than our worst mistakes. All my love, Pa." Mary Ellen pressed the letter to her chest, tears flowing freely. Carter found her there, giving her time to grieve while marshals searched the rest of the house. "He was a good man who made bad choices," Carter said finally. "In the end, he chose right. That matters." She wiped her eyes, thinking of the sunset spot, a rocky outcrop behind the barn where they'd sat countless evenings, watching the sky paint itself in brilliant colors. "I need to check something." The hiding place was exactly where she expected, a natural cavity in the rocks sealed with fitted stones. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small fortune in gold coins and bills, enough to start over anywhere she chose. "Your father's?" Carter asked. "Clean money," she confirmed. "From before." "Then it's yours, free and clear." He studied her thoughtfully. "What will you do now?" Mary Ellen looked out over the land her parents had loved, had fought to keep, had died protecting in their different ways. The corruption that had poisoned it was being torn out by the roots. The trials would need witnesses, testimony to ensure justice was done. "I'll stay," she decided. "See this through to the end. Make sure their stories are told, all of them, the victims and the villains both." Carter nodded approval. "It won't be easy. Garrison has powerful friends. They'll fight hard. Then we'll fight harder." She touched the badge her father had carved for her as a child, still in her pocket after all these years. Someone needs to bear witness, to remember. As they prepared to leave, Mary Ellen took one last look at the farm. She would return, she decided. When the trials were done and justice served, she would come back and rebuild. Not just the buildings, but the honor of the Caldwell name. The sun was setting as the convoy headed back to town, painting the desert in shades of ending and beginning. Behind them, Antelope Canyon kept its silence, its secrets finally exposed to the cleansing light. Mary Ellen rode toward an uncertain future, carrying the weight of truth and the hope of redemption. She was no longer the innocent girl who'd followed mysterious footprints into darkness. She was a woman who'd faced evil, lost everything, and chosen to stand for justice. The hidden world beneath the territory's respectable facade was crumbling, and from its ashes, something better might grow, if people like Mary Ellen had the courage to tend the seeds of change. The trial preparations took 2 weeks. Mary Ellen stayed in Prescott under Marshal Carter's protection, helping prosecutors sort through the mountain of evidence. Every document had to be cataloged, every connection mapped. She spent long days in a guarded hotel room, identifying names and explaining the gang's operations to federal attorneys who'd arrived from Washington. But even with Morrison dead and many gang members in custody, the danger hadn't passed. 3 attempts were made on her life. A poisoned meal that killed a tasting dog, a rifle shot through her window that missed by inches, and a fire that nearly consumed the hotel's eastern wing. Governor Garrison's reach was long, his desperation growing. "We need to move you," Carter said after the fire. "They know where you are." "No." Mary Ellen stood at the boarded window, watching the street below. "Running makes me look weak, like I might be frightened into silence." Being dead silences you pretty effectively too. She turned to him, resolve hardening. Then we need to strike first. All this evidence, it's enough to convict the small fish. But Garrison, he'll claim ignorance, say Morrison acted alone. We need more. What did you have in mind? Mary Ellen had been thinking about this, turning the problem over like a puzzle. The records showed regular meetings in Phoenix. Garrison couldn't travel to the canyon without arousing suspicion, so Morrison went to him. There have to be traces, hotel registers, witnesses who saw them together. Carter frowned. Phoenix is Garrison's stronghold. Walking in there would be like entering a wolf's den. Then we make the wolf come to us. She moved to the desk where canyon documents were spread. Look at this schedule. Morrison was supposed to meet Garrison next week to discuss expanding operations into New Mexico. What if Morrison kept that appointment? Morrison's dead. Garrison doesn't know that. We've kept the canyon raid quiet, arrested gang members held in secret. As far as Phoenix knows, it's business as usual. Mary Ellen's eyes gleamed. One of the marshals could pose as Morrison, arrange an emergency meeting. Say there's a crisis that needs Garrison's direct attention. Carter considered. It's risky. Garrison's no fool. He's desperate. His whole organization is crumbling, and he doesn't know it yet. Desperate men make mistakes. After much debate, the plan took shape. Marshal Tom Bradley, who bore a passing resemblance to Morrison, would send a coded telegram requesting an urgent meeting. The location would be neutral ground, the Copper Queen Hotel in Jerome, halfway between Phoenix and Prescott. While preparations were made, Mary Ellen returned one last time to Antelope Canyon. She needed items from the hidden chamber to make the deception convincing. Morrison's personal effects, his jacket, anything that would sell the illusion. Carter insisted on accompanying her, along with 4 other marshals. The canyon felt different now, stripped of its menace. Just a natural formation, beautiful and innocent. But as they entered the hidden chamber, Mary Ellen felt the weight of all those grave markers, all those lives cut short. She gathered what they needed quickly, trying not to look at the bloodstains where Morrison had died. But something caught her eye. A small leather journal, different from the business records. She opened it, finding personal entries in Morrison's hand. What is it? Carter asked. His private thoughts, she said, reading. Listen to this. Garrison visited today, drunk again. Talked about his father, how the old man always said he'd amount to nothing. Showed me the letter. Seems the elder Garrison is dying, finally ready to reconcile. G broke down crying like a child. Weakness will destroy him eventually. Interesting, but hardly evidence. Mary Ellen kept reading, then stopped cold. Wait, here's an entry from last month. G getting paranoid. Wants insurance against betrayal. Made me watch while he signed confession. Full details of organization. Says I'm to hide it, produce it if he tries to throw me to wolves. Jokes on him. I made copy for myself. Both docs in usual place. They searched the chamber thoroughly, finally finding a hidden compartment behind the desk. Inside were 2 documents. Governor Garrison's signed confession detailing the entire operation, and Morrison's copy. This is it, Carter breathed. This will hang him. But Mary Ellen felt no triumph. Only a deep weariness. So much betrayal, so much greed. Even partners in crime couldn't trust each other. They returned to Prescott with their prize. The federal prosecutors were ecstatic, but Mary Ellen insisted on moving forward with the trap anyway. Why risk it? The lead attorney asked. We have his signed confession. Because he'll claim it was forged, coerced. We need him to incriminate himself freely, in front of witnesses. She thought of her father, of all the people Garrison had destroyed. And because I want to look him in the eye when he realizes it's over. 3 days later, Marshal Bradley sent the telegram. The response came within hours. Garrison would meet at the Copper Queen in 2 days. The trap was set. Mary Ellen traveled to Jerome as part of the federal team, though she was supposed to stay hidden. The mining town clung to the mountainside like a collection of matchboxes, its streets steep and winding. The Copper Queen Hotel sat at the center, elegant amid the frontier roughness. They took positions early. Marshals posed as guests, gamblers, traveling salesmen. Mary Ellen waited in a room adjoining the meeting suite, able to hear everything through a connecting door. Governor Garrison arrived with an escort of territorial rangers, his own private army. He was a large man running to fat, with silver hair and the florid face of a dedicated drinker. But his eyes were sharp, scanning constantly for threats. Marshal Bradley, dressed in Morrison's clothes and affecting his mannerisms, met Garrison in the suite. Mary Ellen pressed her ear to the door, heart pounding. "Tom!" Garrison's voice boomed. "This better be important. Leaving Phoenix right now raises questions." "It's about Caldwell," Bradley said, pitching his voice to match Morrison's drawl. "He knows too much." "I thought that was handled." "So did I, but his daughter's been nosing around, found some things she shouldn't have." A pause. Mary Ellen could almost hear Garrison thinking. "The girl was always the weak point," Garrison said finally. "Should have dealt with her from the start. Where is she now?" "That's the problem. She's disappeared. But before she left, she was asking about you specifically. About Phoenix meetings." A longer pause. Then the sound of liquid pouring Garrison helping himself to whiskey. "How much does she know?" "Too much. And if she's gone to ground, she might be talking to the wrong people. Federal marshals? Maybe, or maybe she's trying to blackmail us. Either way, she needs to be silenced." Mary Ellen's hands clenched. Even now, casual as discussing whether they plotted murder. "I'll handle it," Garrison said. "Put the word out. $50,000 for her, dead or alive. That'll bring every bounty hunter in the territory. That might draw attention." "I don't care." Garrison's control slipped. "This whole thing is unraveling. First those missing freight wagons, then Caldwell getting suspicious. Now his brat threatening everything we've built. I won't see my life's work destroyed by a farmer's daughter." "Our work," Bradley corrected quietly. "What?" "You said your life's work. But we built this together, didn't we? Equal partners, you always said." Something in the tone must have warned Garrison. Mary Ellen heard chair legs scrape. "What's wrong with you, Tom? You sound strange." "Just tired. Tired of the killing, the lying." "Aren't you?" "No," Garrison said flatly. "I'm tired of weak men questioning my decisions. We do what's necessary to survive and prosper. That's always been our way. Even if it means killing innocent people, like Samuel Caldwell. Caldwell wasn't innocent. He was one of us, then betrayed us. The penalty for betrayal is death. You agreed to that. I've agreed to a lot of things, done things that haunt me." Bradley was improvising now, pushing harder. "Sometimes I wonder if we've become the very corruption we once fought against." Garrison laughed harshly. "Corruption? We're businessmen. We saw opportunity and took it. The territory's better for our influence order instead of chaos, prosperity instead of poverty. Built on theft and murder. Built on necessity." Garrison slammed his glass down. "You think the railroad barons are any different? The mining companies? They steal with the laws and lawyers. We're just more honest about it." "Is that how you justify it to yourself?" "I don't need to justify anything, to anyone." Garrison's voice went cold. "Including you. Now are you going to handle the Caldwell girl, or do I need to find someone with more stomach for the work?" Mary Ellen had heard enough. She pushed through the connecting door before Carter could stop her. "You can try," she said quietly. "But you'll fail. Just like you failed to kill my father before he could talk. Just like you failed to burn me out of that hotel." Garrison's face went white, then purple. "You, Mary Ellen Caldwell," she confirmed. "The farmer's daughter who destroyed your empire." Garrison lunged for his gun, but froze as marshals burst through every entrance, weapons drawn. Marshal Carter stepped forward, badge gleaming. "Governor Garrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, theft, and corruption of public office." "This is entrapment," Garrison sputtered. "I was conducting legitimate territorial business." "We have your signed confession," Mary Ellen interrupted. "Hidden in Morrison's private chamber. You really shouldn't have put so much in writing." The fight went out of Garrison like air from a punctured balloon. He sagged into a chair, suddenly looking like the aging, frightened man he really was. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he muttered. "It started small, just taking a cut from smugglers passing through. Then Morrison came with bigger ideas, and the money. God, the money was so easy." "Tell that to the families of the men you killed," Mary Ellen said. "Tell that to my father." Garrison looked up at her, and she saw something break in his eyes. "Your father was a good man. I actually liked him. But he wouldn't stop digging, wouldn't let things be. No, he wouldn't. That's what made him good. The marshals led Garrison away in shackles, his ranger escort wisely choosing not to interfere. Mary Ellen stood in the elegant suite, surrounded by federal agents and prosecutors, and felt empty. She'd expected triumph, vindication. Instead, there was only exhaustion and grief. "You did it," Carter said gently. "It's over." "Not yet," she replied. "There's one more thing I need to do." The next morning, Mary Ellen stood in the cemetery overlooking Prescott. Samuel Caldwell's grave was still fresh, the headstone simple granite. She'd had it carved with words her mother once said, "We are more than our worst mistakes." She knelt in the dust, uncaring of her dress, and told him everything. About the trial to come, about Garrison's arrest, about the dismantling of the criminal network he'd died fighting. She told him about her plans to return to the farm, to rebuild and make it prosper honestly. "I forgive you, Pa," she whispered finally, "and I hope you can forgive yourself, wherever you are." The wind whispered through the junipers, carrying the scent of sage and new beginnings. Mary Ellen rose, dusting off her skirts, and walked back toward town. There would be testimony to give, justice to see done. But first, there was a sunset to watch from a rocky outcrop, and memories to make peace with. The farmer's daughter had followed footprints into darkness and emerged into light. The secrets of Antelope Canyon would soon be public record, the hidden corruption exposed to cleansing sun. And somewhere in that vast Arizona sky, Mary Ellen hoped two spirits watched with pride as their daughter chose the harder path, the path of truth, justice, and redemption. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But Mary Ellen Caldwell was ready for whatever came next, carrying the strength of her parents' love and the armor of her own hard-won wisdom. The trial of Governor Garrison and his conspirators became the most sensational legal proceeding in territorial history. For 6 weeks, the federal courthouse in Prescott overflowed with spectators, journalists, and curious citizens who'd traveled from across Arizona to witness justice unfold. Mary Ellen testified for 3 straight days. She sat in the witness chair, back straight, voice clear, and told the truth. Every detail of her discovery, every document she'd found, every word she'd overheard. Defense attorneys tried to break her, painting her as a hysterical girl seeking attention, a daughter trying to excuse her father's crimes. But she never wavered. "My father was guilty," she said firmly when pressed. "He made terrible choices and paid with his life. But that doesn't erase the crimes of these men or excuse the corruption that poisoned our territory." When she produced Morrison's journal and Garrison's signed confession, the courtroom erupted. The judge had to clear the gallery twice to restore order. Garrison himself seemed to shrink with each revelation, the powerful governor reduced to a frightened old man watching his empire crumble. Other witnesses followed. Ranchers who'd lost cattle, merchants forced to pay protection, families of men who'd disappeared. The careful records kept by the gang became their doom. Every crime documented, every payment tracked. Sheriff Trent, recovered from his burns, turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence, revealing even more layers of corruption. But the most dramatic moment came when Marshal Carter announced a discovery made during the investigation. The mass grave in the hidden canyon contained 43 bodies, men who'd opposed the gang, witnesses who knew too much, even former members who'd tried to leave. Each skeleton told a story of violence and greed. Among the identified remains, Carter testified, was James Hewitt, a federal investigator who disappeared 2 years ago while looking into territorial corruption. His death was reported as an Apache raid. It was murder ordered by Governor Garrison and carried out by Wade. The verdict, when it came, surprised no one. Guilty on all counts. Garrison was sentenced to hang, though appeals would drag on for months. His co-conspirators received various sentences, some to prison, others to hard labor. The corrupt network that had strangled the territory was torn out root and branch. But for Mary Ellen, the end of the trial brought no celebration. She stood outside the courthouse, autumn wind tugging at her black dress, and felt only a hollow ache where satisfaction should have been. "What now?" Carter asked, joining her on the steps. "Now I go home," she said simply. Try to rebuild something worth having. You could stay in town. There's talk of a position with the territorial government. They need honest people to replace the corrupt ones." Mary Ellen smiled sadly. "I'm a farmer's daughter, Marshal. The land is in my blood. I need to go back, make peace with it all." She returned to the Caldwell farm on a crisp October morning. The place looked abandoned. Windows dusty, garden overgrown, fences sagging. But the bones were strong, the land still good. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The first weeks were the hardest. Memories ambushed her at every turn. Her father's voice echoing from the barn, her mother's laughter in the kitchen. Neighbors kept their distance, unsure how to treat the woman who'd exposed their community's dark secrets. Some saw her as a hero, others as a traitor who'd destroyed good men. But slowly, help came. Clara Watson arrived one morning with fresh bread and strong coffee, staying to help clear the garden. "You did right," she said firmly. "My husband lost cattle to those thieves. We just never knew who was behind it." Others followed. Men who'd been too frightened to stand against the gang now came to mend fences and repair the barn. Women who'd whispered suspicions for years brought food and fellowship. The community, wounded but not broken, began to heal. Mary Ellen worked from dawn to dusk, finding solace in honest labor. She hired two Hands brothers who'd lost their own ranch to the gang's predations, and together they began rebuilding the Caldwell legacy. Not the tainted wealth her father had accumulated through crime, but something clean and lasting. Winter came early that year, blanketing the desert in rare snow. Mary Ellen stood at her mother's grave, now joined by her father's, and told them about the farm's progress. 20 head of cattle, bought honest. The garden replanted. The house warm and welcoming again. "I'm courting," she admitted, almost shyly. "Thomas Bradley, the marshal who played Morrison. He's a good man, Pa, honest and kind. Ma would have liked him." Spring brought unexpected visitors. A delegation from Washington, sent to investigate the complete breakdown of territorial governance. They interviewed Mary Ellen extensively, using her testimony to draft new laws against corruption. Her story, they said, had reached the president himself. "You've done a great service," the lead investigator told her. "Your courage exposed a cancer that might have spread throughout the Southwest." "I did what was necessary," Mary Ellen replied. "What my parents taught me in their different ways." As summer arrived, so did news that Governor Garrison's appeals had failed. He would hang at month's end. Mary Ellen felt no joy at this, only a weary acknowledgement that justice, however harsh, had been served. The night before the execution, she couldn't sleep. She saddled her horse and rode to Antelope Canyon one last time. The moon was full, lighting the entrance like a stage. She dismounted and walked into the narrow passage, no longer afraid. The canyon had been stripped of its secrets. The hidden chambers were empty. The stolen goods returned or auctioned for victims' compensation. It was just a beautiful natural formation again, innocent of human evil. But as she stood in the main chamber, Mary Ellen could still feel the weight of what had happened here. The choices made, the lives lost, the corruption that had flourished in darkness. She said a prayer for all of them, victims and villains alike, then left the canyon forever. The execution took place at dawn. Mary Ellen didn't attend, but she stood on her porch watching the sun rise over the desert. At the appointed hour, she bowed her head in a moment of silence, not for Garrison, but for all the might-have-beens, all the lives destroyed by greed. Thomas Bradley found her there an hour later. He'd left the marshal's service, taken a job as sheriff in a neighboring county. His proposal was simple and heartfelt, offering not just love, but partnership in building something good from the ashes of tragedy. Mary Ellen said yes. They married in the autumn, a small ceremony at the farm with Marshal Carter officiating. Clara Watson stood as witness, tears streaming down her face. The community gathered to celebrate, not the union of two people only, but the final healing of wounds that had festered too long. As winter approached again, Mary Ellen stood in her mother's garden, now thriving under her care. Her hand rested on her growing belly, feeling new life quicken within. The cycle continued, death and birth, sorrow and joy, endings and beginnings. Thomas joined her, wrapping strong arms around her from behind. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "No," she said, meaning it. "We are more than our worst mistakes. Pa taught me that, in the end." The sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the rocks in shades of fire. Somewhere out there, Antelope Canyon kept its silence, its red walls holding only beauty now. The secrets it once harbored had been dragged into light, examined, and judged. Justice had been served, however imperfectly. Mary Ellen Bradley, once Caldwell, turned toward her home, their home, where warmth and love waited. She'd followed footprints into darkness and found horrors beyond imagining, but she'd also found strength, courage, and ultimately, redemption. The farmer's daughter had become a woman of the land again, but changed, tempered by fire and loss into something stronger. She would raise her children to know truth from lies, right from wrong. She would teach them that courage meant doing what was necessary, even when it cost everything. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, she would tell them the story of their grandfather, a good man who lost his way but found it again in time to save what mattered most. She would tell them about their grandmother, whose strength lived on in their blood. She would teach them that in this harsh and beautiful land, love and justice were the only things worth fighting for. The territory would become a state soon, built on laws rather than lawlessness. Men like Garrison would be replaced by honest officials, though the temptation of corruption would always lurk. But there would also always be those willing to stand against it, ordinary people who chose extraordinary courage when tested. Mary Ellen had been such a person. Her father, in his final moments, had been another. And God willing, her children would carry on that legacy, guardians against the darkness that sometimes crept into human hearts. The stars emerged one by one in the vast Arizona sky, eternal witnesses to the dramas of mortal lives. Below them, a woman who'd seen too much and survived it all walked into her house, where light and laughter waited. The secrets of Antelope Canyon were buried forever, but the lessons they taught would echo through generations. That truth, however painful, was better than comfortable lies. That justice, however delayed, was worth pursuing. And that love, however tested, could survive even the darkest revelations. In the end, that was Samuel Caldwell's true legacy. Not the crime or the shame, but the daughter who'd loved him enough to seek justice, and loved truth enough to see it done. The farmer's daughter who'd followed footprints into a canyon and emerged stronger than the forces that sought to destroy her. The story was ended. But life, with all its complexities and possibilities, continued on. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If you enjoyed this Wild West tale, don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Mary Ellen's journey. What would you have done in her place?